Good afternoon, my name is Chris Ways. I'm here to talk to you today about prescription medication pricing. Some of us, much like myself, have been negatively impacted by the price of prescription medication in recent years. For me personally, it's the EpiPen. I depend on the EpiPen, which is an auto-injector of epinephrine, to treat me when I get stung by an insect. When I get stung, I go into a process called anaphylactic shock from the allergic reaction to the venom. My throat begins to close and I am unable to breathe. I require epinephrine to reverse those effects and be able to live. Without an epinephrine injection, I could die. Many of us are affected by this. Perhaps it's on a daily basis for a daily prescription you take, or like myself, an emergency prescription. So what really gets to me is that pharmaceutical companies are putting profits before patients. In the fiscal year 2015, the U.S. Defense Department spending was $496.1 billion US dollars. Spending on prescription medications during that time frame was $425 billion US dollars. At the current spending rates, it is estimated that in the year 2020, spending on prescription medications will exceed the spending on the U.S. Defense Department. In an article published in the American Journal for Public Health, Kennedy and Wood note from their study in 2015, 22 million Americans could not afford their prescription medications. They also state that this number is down slightly from 2009, when 26.5 million Americans could not afford their prescription medications. This number being down is due in part to the Affordable Care Act and an economy which has recovered since 2009. However, when we look at that 22 million Americans, we need to think about the individual, not just the collective. How is the individual affected? Well, we can look at Brenna Hayman. Brenna Hayman has a rare genetic disorder called Wilson's disease. Wilson's disease is the body's inability to remove excess copper from the blood. Wilson's disease is treated by Cyprin. Cyprin is a generic drug that's been on the market for 30 plus years. It is the only drug that treats Wilson's disease. In 2013, Brenna's copays jumped from $700 to over $10,000. So why did she see a 3,200, that's right, 3,200% price increase? That price increase came at the hands of Valiant Pharmaceuticals, who purchased the drug in 2010 and has steadily increased that price from 2013 to where it is today. If Brenna is unable to afford her medication, she will die from copper toxicity. Many people are unable to afford their medications. We can look at another person called Marlene Condon. Marlene is a nature writer. She has a modest income, and she takes hydroxychloroquine for her rheumatoid arthritis. Hydroxychloroquine is also a generic drug that's been on the market for a lot of years, over 20. Hydroxychloroquine has gone from $32 to over $500. This led Marlene to not be able to afford her medication. She had to make that decision of being able to pay for her medication or not being able to pay for her food. That's a tough decision for any one of us to have to make. So now Marlene is faced with that decision. She chose not to fill that prescription. She now faces days of excruciating pain where she is unable to get out of bed because of her rheumatoid arthritis. The FDA issues drug patents. And drug patents are designed to protect the intellectual property of a drug. They are issued for a period of 20 years. During that 20-year period, research and development, clinical trials, and final FDA approval will happen. Once a drug is brought to market, it can enjoy the benefit of patent protection for a period of 12 to 15 years. Patents ensure that drugs are free from competition that use the same formula or delivery method. So are patents actually a good thing? They actually are. Patents are a good thing in that they protect the investment that the company has made. These investments can be very large and very expensive. Patents are also a bad thing. Patents allow companies to make small changes to the formulas and reapply for patent protection, effectively blocking cheaper generics from coming to the market. We can look at the current opioid crisis in America, and the treatment for that is a drug called Narcan. The makers of Narcan have sought to get a new patent for change of delivery method. They seek to put it as a dissolvable tape that will be put under the person's tongue. If this process is allowed to go through the way it has previously with other products and other drugs from other companies, cheaper generics will not be available. The companies will not be able to get around the new delivery method using the same formula. Research and development has long been the excuse why companies have to raise their prices. They say, we need to fund our research and development, which is why we need these high prices. Well, Consumer Reports determined that they're not telling the truth in that matter. Drug companies will spend twice as much on marketing and advertising of their products than they do on research and development. Johnson & Johnson, for example, spent 30% of its revenue stream on advertising and administrative costs compared to just 13% on research and development. That's less than half of what they spent on advertising and administrative costs. Now, research and development is not cheap. It can cost the company up to $2 billion to bring a new drug to market. Spending on research and development has increased significantly in dollars over the past few years, but not necessarily in percentage of revenue stream. The increased dollars going into research and development is driven by the needs for innovation. The consumer demands fewer side effects, and some of these side effects are designated to specific demographics. Some people are affected by drugs in different ways. Now the companies are seeking to get out all of the side effects that are unwanted by certain demographics, which has led them to spend more money on research and development. However, as significant as their spending is on research and development, keep in mind it is only about half of what they spend on marketing that drug to you and I. That's important to note. When you look at Johnson & Johnson, with their 13% spent on research and development and 30% of their revenue stream spent on marketing and advertising, you could see that of $2 billion spent on the research and development, with one of their drugs, they could be making a profit margin of $8.8 billion. So where does the money really go? Who really gets the money? Well, the CEOs certainly are making a lot of money off of you and I. Bernie Sanders notes in 2017, it is beyond comprehension while Americans are suffering and dying because they cannot afford their medications they need. The 10 highest paid chief executives in the pharmaceutical industry collectively made $327 million in 2015. These executives get richer while Americans die, and that's not acceptable. $327 million were made by 10 executives, while the average American, 22 million of us in that time frame, couldn't afford our prescriptions. CEO Heather Bresch of Milan Pharmaceuticals received a 671% pay increase from 2007 to 2016. During that time frame, she raised the price of the EpiPen from $104 to $609. Many people couldn't afford to fill that prescription. Some people have to take the risk that they won't come in contact with peanuts or shellfish or get stung by a bee while they're out in nature. That's a huge risk. That's playing with people's lives for bottom line dollars and profits. In 2013, Milan Pharmaceuticals paid Congress $4 million to get EpiPens into every school. And when that passed, they blocked generic maker from getting into the schools with epinephrine. Why? To increase their bottom line profits and so that she could get a pay increase. So, what does it all boil down to? Just like I said in the beginning, profits before patience. They care more about their bottom line and their wallet than they do you or I. Thank you for your time.